night may be long and the dark may be deep, but the answers are there to be found. Whether it's the normal, the abnormal, or the paranormal, you're in the right place. Let's go beyond reality.
Good evening, good morning, welcome everyone. It's Beyond Reality. Just a second. Yeah, I know, Slick. We've got the, we're going to do Skype. Sorry, a little inside stuff going on here. Slick is a little confused about something, but we're okay. Anyway, welcome to the program, everyone. It's Beyond Reality Radio. Tonight's going to be a really interesting night. Sometimes you get a collection of guests and things that all fall together that make it a super special show. Tonight's one of those nights. We've got two guests that'll be joining us tonight. In the first hour, we've got Paolo Attivissimo. And he is an Italian writer who's written a lot about the moon landing hoax assertions. His position is that there was no hoax involved here. We really did go to the moon. The Apollo missions were legitimate. Some people contend they weren't. Some people contend that it was all staged, and it was part of the arms race, the Cold War. You know, the space race, the arms race, the Cold War with the Soviet Union. So Paolo says, no, it wasn't, and we're going to talk about why he says that and why the folks that assert otherwise are misled. That'll be very interesting, and that'll only be for an hour because Paolo has to go to work. He can only be with us for an hour. He's overseas. That's why, Slick, we're doing Skype. And then in the second hour, Gary Williams will be joining us. Gary is a psychic and an author. He's written a book called The Foreseeable Future, and it's a discussion about precognition. He'll talk about how he and how other psychics predict the future. And he'll be taking your phone calls and doing readings. That'll be in the second hour of the program. I will let you know when those phone lines are open. By the way, we will open the phone lines early for our first guest as well as we talk about the moon landing hoax or non-hoax, whatever it happens to be. So that's a pretty great combination. It's a 1-2 punch tonight, and it ends the week with our live shows because, of course, tomorrow night is a best of, as every Friday is. And next week we've got some great shows lined up as well. We've got Gloria York with us next week. That'll be Tuesday night. Monday we've got a scheduling change that we're making, but Tuesday night Gloria York will be with us. She's a best-selling author, and she's got a book called Medical Manslaughter. She's also a clairaudient and a clairvoyant and a spiritual channeler. Her book is Medical Manslaughter, Will Your Doctor Cause Your Death? And it's a true story based on her husband's death by medical error. Gloria also outlines many supernatural experiences in the book, including what she describes as the 6 miracles that took place during that ordeal. And then Wednesday night, this is another great show. We're just, Slick's just lining them up here. John Barber, who is a Hollywood legend. He's the godfather of reality TV. He's an actor, he's a comedian, he's a TV host, and he's an author. He's going to be talking about the Garrison tapes. Now, you know what I'm talking about when I say the Garrison tapes, right? Never seen before documents provided by Garrison are being released on John's YouTube channel through a series of face-to-face presentations. Now, I'm talking about James Garrison. James Garrison was the district attorney for New Orleans, who was the only one to bring charges against anybody for the JFK assassination. And in fact, the movie JFK was based on Jim Garrison's work and his following, or his book that detailed his work, which was called, I believe, On the Trail of the Assassins. So, great week of programs, a great program tonight. A lot of cool stuff coming up. There's some things I want to mention before we go to break and get our guest here. Scaracon's coming up, and I mentioned this the other night, but Scaricon will be featuring for the first time ever a series of podcaster awards. So if you know a podcaster, listen to a podcast that you like related to horror or pop culture, or you're a podcaster yourself in one of those genres, you should check out the Scaricon page and submit the podcast for the awards. It's going to be pretty cool. Also, if you're just a fan of horror or sci-fi or paranormal entertainment, you're going to want to look into Scaricon as well. It's June 7th through the 9th, Framingham, Massachusetts. It's going to be a great, great weekend. There seems like there was something else I wanted to mention, but it's escaping me now, so we'll come back to it. I really do want to get into this conversation because we only have him for an hour. Again, our guest coming up is Paolo Attivissimo, and we're going to be talking about the moon landing hoax. But Paolo is saying there was no hoax involved here, and the people that say that have it wrong. That's coming up. It's Beyond Reality Radio. Please support the program. Go to patreon.com/Johaw. That's JOHAW. As I said, we've got a great show lined up for you. We've got two guests. The second hour, we're going to have Gary Williams with us. He's a psychic and an author. We're going to be talking about his book, which is The Foreseeable Future. It's a discussion of precognition and predicting the future among psychics. But our first hour will be featuring a discussion about a topic that's rather controversial at times, maybe all the time. We're talking about the moon landing. Some people believe that the moon landings never really happened, that it was a staged media event. The footage that we've all come to know from NASA, which were of astronauts walking and experimenting and exploring the surface of the moon, was actually done on a soundstage. That's what the conspiracists contend. Our guest tonight, Paolo Attivissimo, says that's not the way it happened. We actually did go to the moon, and it was all real, and it was all amazing. And Paolo, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on Beyond Reality Radio tonight.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be your guest.
So you've got a book. It's called Moon Hoax Debunked. You've taken this head on. Now, first of all, let's talk about the moon landings themselves. Why are they a lightning rod for conspiracy theories and conspiracy theorists?
Well, I think this is by design. Let's not forget that President Kennedy intended the moon landings to be something that would amaze the world, that would make America seem incredibly advanced technologically. Therefore, they were chosen as something that was, in theory, unattainable, or in any case, at the very limits of technology of the time. So the idea of making something that people might not believe was sort of part of the package.
The conspiracy theorists, folks that have talked about this, and we've had people on the program talking about this, point to a lot of things. They have a basket full of what they claim to be evidence that this did not happen the way it was reported or the way history has been teaching us. Is this a case at all where there's smoke, there might be some fire?
Well, it's always a good idea to question authority and double-check every single fact. And that's what I've done in my book. And I've also met the Apollo astronauts. I've spoken to the engineers who designed the vehicles. I've gone through all the technical literature that's been published, not only by NASA, but also by the Russian Space Agency, by the European Space Agency. And it turns out that, the story is very convincing. There's very solid evidence that we actually did go to the moon, and we went 6 times. The interesting part about this, in this case, is why are there so many anomalies in the photographic record? And so I decided to look at them one by one and see if they stood up to rigorous testing. And it turns out that so far, nothing has actually survived. Most of the claims, like, basic things like why are there no stars in the Apollo photographs? Well, there aren't any stars in any of the pictures taken in space, because if you're setting your camera for daylight, you're not going to gather enough light to see a very faint object, such as a star, even if you're in space.
Right.
Photography still works that way. Things like, why is the flag fluttering as if there's wind on the moon? And we all know that the moon is an airless body. And, the answer is, if you go and look at the technical manuals and you look at the photographs carefully, you'll see that the flag is actually being held up by a horizontal rod. It looks like one of your little house curtains, which gives a very nice effect. It looks like it's fluttering. It's actually all creased up because it was packed very neatly next to one of the legs of the lunar module, so that it could be taken out and planted on the lunar surface. So one by one, they all fall down as soon as you have all the facts, and you start thinking, well, if this alleged evidence of fakery, if it's so obvious, then why would the people at NASA be so stupid as to do it so obviously, as to make such obvious mistakes?
Right. It seems like if they were intending to forge something, they would do something without so many mistakes. We're going to get into talking about more of these photographs and more of this other so-called evidence in a minute. But I want to find out more about you. At what point did you take an interest in this particular topic? This is not something that everybody decides they're going to go out and either prove or disprove. At some point, it caught your attention, and you started doing this work. What happened?
Yeah, well, it caught my attention as a child, actually. I was born in 1963, so I was 6 years old when the first moon landing happened, and I remember the mood of the time as this being not just in the United States, but in Italy, where I was living at the time. It was sort of this, humanity went to the moon. It wasn't just an American event. It was a worldwide emotion. And so this caught me up, and I then sort of became enamored with the subject through books that were published at the time. And later on, when the internet came along, I started writing technical books about the internet, how to use it. And one of the things that kept popping up was conspiracy theories. So I had a look at that and said, well, maybe I can use my skills to explain why these conspiracy theories are wrong, or many of the strange claims that were circulating on the early 1990s internet were factually incorrect. And so I just wrote a page saying, well, this is the basics about the moon landings. We went 6 times. There's 20,000 photographs. It would be too hard to fake. So we must have been there. We must have gone. And it just blossomed from there. People started writing to me and saying, well, why don't you explain this picture? Why don't you explain that detail? We've seen this strange glitch in a movie. Why is this, why the Van Allen radiation belts and so on? So one thing led to another. So in the end, about 10 years ago, I said, well, let's write a book, put it online, and let people decide for themselves.
The conspiracy itself, and I know this really started to gain some traction with some folks when the internet was in its infancy, at least from a commercial use standpoint. But do we know where the origin of any of that was? There a central figure along the way who became a real proponent of this early on that were helped it gain traction?
Well, yes. I think we can mention a couple of names, historical conspiracy theorists. I think the first name that comes to everyone's mind, if anyone's been interested in the moon landing hoax theories, is Bill Kaysing. Bill Kaysing wrote a book called "We Never Went to the Moon: America's $30 billion Swindle," and this was 1974. So the moon landings were very fresh in everyone's mind. The last moon landing was in 1972. And here he is with apparently impressive credentials. Kaysing says he was working for the Rocketdyne division of Rockwell International, which was one of the companies that made the Saturn V, the giant rocket that took people to the moon. So it sounds like he's someone who knows what he's talking about. However, when you start doing fact checking, it turns out that his actual qualification is a bachelor's degree in English literature. And he says that in his book, actually, he says, quote, "My knowledge of rockets and technical writing both equaled 0. So he's not really an expert on the topic. But I think he's the first person that comes to mind. And he appeared in many TV programs and was quite popular with his book. There are also other people who came before him, but their books have now disappeared. They're basically impossible to find. I know this gentleman in Texas, I think his name was James Colley, and he wrote a book, but it's vanished. It's impossible to find. So if any one of your listeners has a chance to find anything prior to 1974, then we can make advancements in the history of conspiracy theories about the moon landings.
We have to take a break in just a couple of minutes here, and on the other side of the break, we're going to get into some of what the conspiracy theorists call evidence in support of their theory. But before we do that, you made the mention that if NASA was going to fake something, there are a lot of really bright people working on the Apollo missions and the moon landings, and if they were trying to fake something, it seems like they would have done a better job. But I guess the conspiracy theorists might say they wouldn't have been able to anticipate even 1990s computer technology that allows people to analyze these things in a little more depth than they could have back in 1969, 1970, 71.
Good point. In fact, the main trouble in assuming or supposing that NASA faked the footage and faked the moon rocks and faked the rockets is that sooner or later technology would develop so much more that we would find the telltale evidence of what happened, of the fakery. So far, we haven't. All the analyses that I've seen of the Apollo photographs, for example, are based on very amateurish technology. I mean, if you just get any Apollo photograph, you download a low-quality JPEG from the internet, and then you start enhancing it. Obviously, you're going to get what you call artifacts,
right?
Which is due to compression. It's not in the original photograph. If you download the original scan, you get none of these strange artifacts appearing in the picture. So it's not due to an improvement in technology that we're finding this apparent evidence. It's because we're not using the new technology in the proper way. So if you actually go to the original scans, which are, by the way, are freely downloadable, the quality is absolutely amazing. Then you actually get to see all the details, and it becomes even more difficult to fake such quality.
We're talking with Paolo Attivissimo, and we're talking about the moon landing hoax, or was it a hoax? Paolo says it wasn't, and history says it wasn't. And we're going to continue that conversation. We'll also take your phone calls if you have a question or two. We don't have a lot of time with Paolo tonight, but the number is 844-687-7669. And on the other side of the break, we're going to get into talking about some of the so-called evidence that the conspiracy theorists have presented as being proof that those moon landings never happened. It's Beyond Reality Radio. Looking for our guest's book? Go to Amazon.com/shop/JVJTaps. Our guest tonight is Paolo Attivissimo, and he's written a book about the topic called Moon Hoax Debunked. Paolo, is the book in Italian? I know you have an English version, but was it written in Italian?
Yes, the original version was written in Italian for my readers. As I work mostly in Italian, I live in Switzerland, but my readership is mostly in Italian. But I realized there was a potential interest for it abroad as well. So I said, well, let's make an English language version. And it's freely available. You just go to www.moonhoaxdebunked.com and it's there. I mean, if people want to get the Amazon version on paper, it's also available. The idea is to get this information out as much as possible, have it as easily available as possible so that anyone can make their mind up very easily.
Let's talk about some of the so-called evidence that the conspiracy theorists have put forth. And a lot of it does have to do with the photographic record or the video record. Tell us about the lighting assertions. I mean, one of the things that people will say is that they can tell based on some mathematics that there's a spotlight of certain size at a certain distance that's actually producing some of the light effects. Go over some of that with us.
Yeah. There's a very famous photograph of Buzz Aldrin, the second man to step on the moon, who is standing in the shadow of the spacecraft, of the lunar module, on the lunar surface. And he's very well lit. And now people say, well, how can he be so well lit if he's in the shadow of the vehicle? And, the answer is true, correct. There is a sort of a spotlight. The spotlight is his pal, his colleague Neil Armstrong, who is actually wearing a very bright white spacesuit, which is still pristine. It hasn't been dirtied by lunar dust. So it's very bright, and he's standing in full sunlight a few meters away from Buzz Aldrin. So he's actually splashing his sunlight onto Buzz. Plus, all around the lunar module, you have the entire surface of the moon, which is daylit with sunlight, which is even brighter than the sunlight that we find on Earth. It's about 30% brighter. So you have all these light sources coming from all directions and lighting everything that's above the surface of the moon. And then obviously you add the fact that the astronauts were trained for photography. in space. So they set the camera for shadow photography. So if they're taking a picture of Buzz Aldrin in the shadow, then they're going to open the settings, the f-stops, so that you can take a picture in the shadow and it looks correctly exposed. And as you go on one by one, all these claims can be easily explained if you know a little bit of photography and you think of the context.
Is part of the problem here that many of the people doing the analysis are using what we would consider to be Earth-based physics in their analysis and not considering the different conditions that would be on the lunar surface that would create different properties for the light reflection and properties for what we would consider to be atmosphere degradation of vision, those types of things?
Well, partly, yes, I think you're correct in that. But most of the times what I see is people using a non-terrestrial physics, actually physics that doesn't really exist about like the properties of the light on the moon. There are some differences. For example, on the moon, there's no atmosphere. So an object that is miles away is still incredibly sharp. Whereas on Earth, you have the atmosphere, which sort of fades colors and fades and obliterates detail. So there are differences. But by and large, the light on the moon follows the same optical principles as it follows as on Earth. So, shadows behave in the same way. Many people, for example, believe that shadows on the moon should be pitch black. They should be absolutely black because there's no air to diffuse the light. Well, that's not actually true because shadows, the lighting of shadows doesn't depend on how much air there is. It depends on how much surface there is around to splash light into the shadow. So as you go on, you realize that people have a sort of a misperception of how optics and physics work. And once you clear that misperception, it becomes obvious that, the photographs are actually following the rules of physics, and you can actually replicate many of the same phenomena here on Earth. One of my favorite recommendations is if you have questions about the lighting of the photographs, the best thing is to buy a model kit, build it, put it on a surface outside somewhere at night with a bright light shining on it, and take as many photographs as you want. You'll see so many interesting effects appear, and they surprisingly look just like pictures taken on the moon because that's the way light works.
One of the other contentions from the folks who claim this was a conspiracy is the discussion of the radiation belts, that human life couldn't survive that. How do we explain that away?
Basically, the main problem presented by conspiracy theorists is there's these two large bands of high-energy particles that surround the Earth. They're called Van Allen belts. They were discovered in the 1950s by James Van Allen. And they're presented as this impassable barrier which will fry anyone who goes through them. Well, point number one, don't fly through them. They're actually donut-shaped. So all you have to do is, if you want to avoid the brunt of this radiation, you simply fly around the edges, which is what the Apollo astronauts did. The second idea is, what kind of radiation is it? Are we talking about gamma radiation that will turn you into the Hulk or anything like that? No, it's very basic alpha, beta particles, which will be stopped by a few sheets of paper. So not all radiation is the same, is equally penetrating. So NASA had a simple idea. They built a space capsule, the Apollo capsule. They sent it through the Van Allen belts without a crew on board to see how much radiation would get through the shielding. And not enough got through to be dangerous. The equivalent dose is about a couple of X-rays. So, survivable. Also, we have another precedent from a very reliable source, which is the Russians. The Russians sent a spacecraft called Zond 5 a few years before the Apollo landings, and they carried animals inside it. It flew all the way to the moon and back, and the animals came out in good shape. So that means that this radiation obviously is not as dangerous as it's made out to be.
All right, let's jump to the phone lines here. We've got Ken in Kansas City with a question. Hey, Ken, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Thanks for the
call.
call.
I got a question for your guest. I'm sorry about that. I heard on another radio show a couple of days ago, and I'm a believer that the moon landing happened. But the only question that brought to my mind was, I believe it was they have an issue with the lunar lander, coming up with the lunar lander for the next space mission. If that's possible, that why can't they modify the original design of the lunar lander instead of coming up with a whole new theory of one?
So you're
taking so long.
Let me make sure I understand, Ken. What you're saying here is that the discussions for returning to the moon, or even Mars, for that matter, are one of the problems they're citing is the fact that they have to figure out how to create a lunar lander. And your question is, why don't they just take the one they used, if it was legitimate, modify it with today's technology, and use that science?
Correct. I mean, we're so technologically advanced now. All they got to do is modify what they currently had to make it a little larger.
Yeah.
In my eyes.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
But, I'm a total believer.
Yeah. No. That's a great question. What do you think, Paolo?
Yeah, well, it's a very good question, Ken. It's a question I've asked myself to many of the NASA engineers I've talked with, and the answer is always, well, nobody is going to fly to the moon in such a dangerous vehicle now. In the 1960s, we have the Soviets to beat. We have to show that the American way of life is better than anybody else's. So if people lose their lives in the process of going to the moon, well, so be it. That means the people who went to the moon, the astronauts, were actually risking their lives in so many different ways. There were so many things that could go wrong. Many did go wrong. Remember Apollo 13. Every mission had malfunctions and problems. Look at the lunar module, the original Apollo lunar module. It has one descent engine. If that engine fails, you're dead. It has one ascent engine. If that engine fails, you're dead again. So there is very limited redundancy. No one today would design a spacecraft with that kind of limitation. So it would take a multi-engine vehicle which has to be designed. It has to be redesigned from scratch. Unfortunately, taking the original Apollo spacecraft and remaking it sounds very romantic. I'd love to see it, to be honest, but it's not doable right now with the technology that we have, because it would be simply too dangerous. No error margins at all.
Okay. No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Ken. It was a good question. That brings up a bigger question for me, and this is one of the what I think is probably the most legitimate questions, regardless of whether we're talking about a conspiracy or not. Is, given today's technology, why haven't we been back? Is it just there's nothing there to see?
Well, it's a combination of things, really. First of all, there's no political motivation. Let's not pretend that the Apollo moon landings were this sort of heroic gesture of let's do science on a massive scale. No, this was political propaganda. Kennedy wanted to impress the world, so he said, "Okay, let's pay as much as we need to put a man on the moon." And the bill was pretty hefty. Obviously, then Vietnam came along, and priorities changed, and so on. So it would be almost impossible to get Congress, the American Congress, to fund the amount of money, the huge amount of money that would be necessary to get back to the moon. So you have a cost problem. Then you have a technology problem. The technologies that we used in the 1960s are now completely obsolete. So we'd have to build the entire process again. We'd have to have new materials, new paint systems, new navigation systems, new computer systems. If you look at the 1960s computers that were used on Apollo, they were literally handmade. The technology is absolutely fantastic if you're interested in computer technology of the past. That kind of thing would simply not fly, literally and also figuratively today. They would say, no question, we're not going to the moon with a computer made with single discrete wires. Anything can go wrong. So you have no political motivation, no funding, and you don't have – I have to borrow this quote from Walt Cunningham, one of the Apollo astronauts. He said, Nobody has the guts today to go to the moon like we would. We say, okay, we'll go. If the ship crashes, so be it. We died doing something that we really believed in. And so that's basically it. It's too dangerous, too expensive, and there's no reason to go right now. There is some science that we could do on the moon, and especially on the far side of the moon. Look for alien signals, for example. That would be a fascinating endeavor. Unfortunately, nobody is willing to risk their life, political life especially, on a mission to the moon for science.
I think it was in today's news. I think the Israelis were attempting to put a vehicle on the lunar surface, and it failed. If I read that headline correctly.
Yes, indeed. It was heart-stopping. It's very sad to see them so charged with this idea. Or we're finally going to get one of our own vehicles. It's a privately funded vehicle, by the way, to the moon, and it lost control above the lunar surface as it was descending, and so we don't know yet exactly what went wrong. But space is hard. It's NASA was very good at making it look sort of easy,
right?
But it's incredibly difficult. The amount of technology and knowledge and expertise required to get a spacecraft to the moon is fantastic. And this is what I admire about the moon landings. Basically, you're trying to hit a flying bullet, the moon, which is flying around the Earth, with another bullet, and you have to hit it not too fast, not too slow, so that you can stop at the last minute. With the last remaining drops of fuel, you can gently land on the surface. As we all know, Neil Armstrong landed on the moon with basically on fumes, because that was all he had in the fuel tanks as he was trying to find a place to land. So the skill required is so impressive, and it's so encouraging for young people to say, look, this is what we can do when we decide to do something, and we're determined to do it, and we get the funding and the technology, and we need people who have skills, who know math, who know science, and can develop these vehicles and send us to places that we've never seen before. So it can be a great encouragement for all sorts of knowledge, and for example, STEM, all the topics, subjects about of education need to be. We're a scientific technology culture. We need to do science-based decisions rather than gut-based decisions.
I'm afraid this might be the last question we have time for, but there's a whole another version of the conspiracy theory which says, yeah, we did go to the moon. We did all of that. But the images that we saw were staged because of one of two reasons. Either they didn't want the Soviets to get any scientific value out of anything they saw, and or they didn't want a national catastrophe to appear on worldwide television if it went wrong. Any thought that there might be some truth to that?
Well, it's a reasonable idea. I mean, it's certainly more plausible than the we fix it all theory scenario, but it doesn't stand up to scrutiny. I dealt with this from another angle. I went to Douglas Trumbull, the visual effects designer of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which in the 1960s was the state of the art in visual effects. And I asked him, I said, if you had to fake the moon landings, what would be the most difficult thing to do, to fake? And he said, well, we couldn't do it with 1960s technology because of a very strange detail, the dust. The way the dust moves when it's kicked by the astronauts, when it's kicked up by the wheels of the electric car that they used on the moon, is something that we could not do fake in a studio on Earth, because we wouldn't have the correct gravity,
right.
We wouldn't have the vacuum. So if you look at 2001: A Space Odyssey, you'll see that when they land on the moon, the dust doesn't actually just fly away horizontally as it should. It billows and forms these sort of clouds because it's in a studio. So if even Stanley Kubrick and Douglas Trumbull couldn't get it right for 2001, then obviously there was no technology to allow you to fake the moon landings in the 1960s.
Paolo,
even if you look at
No, it's okay. We're just out of time. One more time, give your website and where folks can get the book, because it's a fascinating topic.
Sure, it's www.moonhoaxdebunked.com.
It's been a great conversation. I hope we get a chance to get you back some point. I know you have to. You've got another obligation you've got to get to here.
Yeah, anytime. Glad to be with you.
All right. Thank you very much. We will be back in just a few moments. It's Beyond Reality Radio. Please support the program. Go to patreon.com/Johhaw. That's JOHAW. Good morning, good evening. I'm JV Johnson. Jason's off tonight. We've got a lot going on here tonight, which is good, right? Had a great conversation in the first part of the program with Paolo Attivissimo about his book, Moon Hoax Debunked. And in our second hour, we've got Gary Williams, psychic and author, joining us. He's going to be talking about his book, The Foreseeable Future, The Mystery of Precognition. But we will also be taking your phone calls for readings. And those phone calls have already started to line up. The folks that are on now are going to be on hold for a little while, so just be patient. But if you haven't called in yet and you do want to get in line for a reading, now's the time to do it at 844-687-7669. Just a couple things, and we're going to go to break and bring the guest in. Tomorrow night's program is, of course, a best of. Next week, we've got some really, really super guests on. Gloria York will be on Tuesday night. We're still working out a schedule change on Monday, but Tuesday night, Gloria is the author of a book called Medical Manslaughter, Will Your Doctor Kill You? Or Will Your Doctor Cause Your Death? It's a true story based on her husband's death by medical error. And she also talks about many supernatural experiences that occurred during the ordeal, including 6 miracles that took place. That's Tuesday night's program. Wednesday, John Barber will be with us. He is a Hollywood legend, the godfather of reality TV, among many other things. We're going to be talking about the Garrison tapes, never seen before documents, provided by James Garrison, the district attorney of New Orleans, who investigated the JFK assassination. Those documents have been released and are being released on John Barber's YouTube channel through a series of online and face-to-face presentations. So we'll be talking to him on Wednesday night about those documents and what they mean in the effort to get to the truth of the JFK assassination. So a lot of great programs and a lot of great guests coming up. Please stop by my Facebook page, JV Johnson on Facebook, or you can find it by JVJ Paranormal. Give it a like. And also, if you haven't visited the YouTube channel, which has a lot of great stuff on it, we'd love for you to subscribe to that. Go to YouTube and search JV Johnson, or you can just do youtube.com/C/JV Johnson, and you'll get to the channel. We live stream there, plus a lot of great stuff as well. Gary Williams is a psychic and an author. He's got a new book out. It's called The Foreseeable Future, The Mystery of Precognition. Gary, welcome to Beyond Reality Radio. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you. Well, I'm back. This is the second book and the second time, so I should say that the mystery of precognition is really not so much of a mystery since, you ghost hunter guy. I mean, is Jason there? He's the ghost hunter that I know of the most. Is he there or not?
We are both ghost hunters. Jason's not here tonight. No, it's just me tonight.
He's not there. Okay. Well, it was a famous story told by Harry Price about Borley in which he said there was the Borley Rector was going to burn down, and it was a prediction made in a seance. It was supposed to burn down that night, but anyway, the prediction came true like a year later. So predictions can happen years later. In my work, they usually happen within 3 to 6 months, or I end up having to give them their money back. People don't want to know it's going to happen down. Hey, am I going to meet that guy? Yeah, maybe in 5 years. Forget it. Nobody would come to see you. So, yeah, it's an interesting book. If you want to know a little bit about the book, it's basically chock full of experiences that I have had. My psychic journey. I wanted to call it that. The publishers refused to call it that. So I came up with that catchy title. And, how I became psychic and how it started and, some of the more interesting people that I've read for and that kind of thing. And that's basically the gist of the book in a nutshell.
We're going to go through a couple questions here. We've already got full phone lines for people that want to talk to you and maybe get a reading from you. When we go to the lines, I know we don't have a lot of time for each caller, but what do you need from them when we start that part of the show?
The same thing as if you were to come here in person for an hour reading. I only ask them one thing. I want to know the area or a specific question that you want to know about, such as, my husband left me for another woman. Can you tell me if he's coming back? My house has been on the market for 8 months. Is this house ever going to sell? I'm out of work, Gary. Please look and see when I'm going to get a job. Not just give me a relationship reading. That's so vague. That could mean you're married, it could mean you don't have a boyfriend, or it could mean that you're wanting your ex to come back. I get them all the time.
Right.
That's all I want. I don't need to know the whole story. I work with a guide since 1971. That's a long time. Same guides.
Wow.
There you go.
At what point did you become aware of your sensitivities?
Age of 16.
Wow.
I had no interest in the psychic whatsoever. I did not know what the word paranormal meant. And my high school biology teacher, in her infinite wisdom, took us to a spiritualist church. And don't forget, this was back in the day when they had physical mediums that could do things that they don't do now. Anyway, cut a long story short, we went to a materialization seance in which the spirits materialized in the room. They don't do that anymore. Why, I don't know. Anyway, cut a long story really short, someone materialized for me. I was scared stiff. I was a 16-year-old boy. This man comes forward, and he says, my name is Carl Jung, and I was a spiritualist too. And I thought, I got to get out of this room. I don't know who Carl Jung is. I don't want to be here. I was terrified, and I didn't believe it was real, and I took a piece of Wrigley's chewing gum out of my coat pocket, and I handed it to Dr. Jung, and I said, if you're real, crumple this up and hand it back to me, and I had that for 3 years. He said, you've got psychic abilities, and you're going to become a paranormal investigator. I don't remember his exact words. And he said, this is the beginning of your journey, and I'm one of your guides. And I said, I think this is fascinating, but who are you? And, of course, the next day I went to school and looked him up in a book, and I found out that he was Freud and Jung. Right, there you go. Right. That's how it started.
Wow.
That's how it got started.
Wow. And was that the experience you had when you were working in radio and TV that introduced you to this?
No, that was long before then, long before I went to WGBH, long before I went to Boston.
Gotcha.
I was born in Virginia Beach, so I knew the Casey family I obviously didn't know Edgar Casey since he died in 1944, but I knew his son. I studied in Hewlin's classes. I took instruction in astrology at the ARE, and, I practically lived at the Casey place when I was growing up in my late teens and early 20s. Then I moved to Boston, and I had these psychic experiences of the Catholic priest who came and told me that I had a previous life with this girl, and went into a trance and all this kind of thing, and he had to cover it up. He had to cover up reincarnation, or they'd kick him out of the priesthood. All those things are in the book, and in the previous book that you interviewed me about last May when I was on your show, Walk on the Wild Side. But this one's all about my psychic journey, the title they didn't want to use.
Yeah.
And it's been quite a journey. I'm still on the journey. I'm still looking at some of the prophecies of Nostradamus and seeing why, they weren't fulfilled. Nothing really happened in 1999 in 7 months. The world didn't come to an end, and all that kind of thing. So I don't know. I don't do too much world stuff. It's mostly personal, but I work with the police for free in trying to find missing children. And I think that's very interesting. David Paulides, in his book about missing children in state park, or missing people in state parks,
right.
I've tried to find them, some of them, and I do have a theory, but it's really not part of the show. I think some of these people literally go into another dimension. I know we're now into the Bermuda Triangle. It sounds goofy, but that's what I believe the explanation is.
All right,
there you go.
Let's pepper some of these phone calls in between the conversations, because I know people have been waiting on hold for quite some time. So let's go to this is Bill in Pennsylvania. Bill, welcome to the program.
Oh, hello, gentlemen. I'm glad to be on the air.
And you're on
Hi,
with
Bill. Good morning.
Yeah, you're on with Gary.
Yes.
Hi.
Gary, I'd like to
East
ask,
of the Rockies, Bill. That's a joke.
I'm here in the Poconos, the smaller, older mountains.
That's right.
But I'd like to ask, for my lady friend and I, do you see anything, what the future holds for us, how it'll work out for us?
Well, give me her first name. I use a name to tune in on with my guide. I don't flip cards or do anything like that, and I'll give you a timeline if I can. What's her first name?
Her name is Victoria.
Victoria, a lovely name. they're showing me that you've been together for quite some time, which means at least 6 months. Is that true?
Yeah, it's just about exactly 6 months.
Okay, don't tell me any more. Let my guy do the work, okay? That's my job. It will work out. They're showing me summertime weather. I wish I could give you an exact day in the future when she's going to say, let's get married or something. But I see you going on some kind of a short trip. It's not out of the continental United States. And I feel that it could be just a pleasure trip for the day. And when you get back from that trip, I feel that there's going to be a discussion about you sort of being together, not that you're not together now. And this is over the summer, so we're looking at either May, June, July, or August. I don't think it's May. I think I'm talking more about the month of June, and I would say yes, it's definitely a thing, because he showed me that you started out this journey, if you want to call a relationship a journey, about 6 months ago. So you get a yes on Victoria. It's a beautiful name, by the way. I absolutely love that name. Okay, does that answer your question? Because they only let me do this for 3 minutes.
Yeah. Bill, thank you so much. Thanks. Glad we could help you. Thank you for the phone call. Let's take one more here before we go to our bottom of the hour break. This is Megan in Kansas City. Hey, Megan, you're on with Gary Williams.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Terrific.
Hi, good morning, Megan.
Good morning, Gary. Thank you so much for taking my call. Well, like I said, my name is Megan, and I have been focusing a lot on, or not focusing, but curious about my health. And
Your health is one of the things that I do. If you come and see me, I do free healing, and sometimes I can do absent healing. So tell me what your problem is, and I'll tell you what we can possibly do. And by the way, I believe in doctors very, very much. I understand that in the United States you have to pay. Where I live, it's free, but we won't get into that discussion. That's a discussion for a show.
I know
what's
all about
wrong with you?
Yeah, I had a heart failure. They found a hole in my heart, and they put a septal occluder in my heart, and
So you have a pacemaker now, right?
You to tell me about if you don't want to know. I'm pretty bullheaded, and so I need to know, I guess, what I'm missing, or if there's any possibility I'm going to start to take better care of myself. I know it sounds silly, but it's been about 2 years. Are you asking me
if there's I'm such a straightforward guy. Are you asking me, is there a possibility that you're going to die? The answer is no. Basically, if you email me a picture of yourself, I don't charge for healing, to the email address, which I'm sure Jason will give you. I can assure you that I'll send you healing, and you'll certainly feel better. There's no guarantees with absent healing. There's no guarantee with anything. There's no guarantee in life. But I don't see you dying anytime in the near future, okay? So, I've done healing on animals, and they've gotten better.
Megan,
so that's the best I can do for you on a short call.
Yeah, Megan,
okay?
stay on the line, Megan, for just a second. Gary, your website, GaryWilliamsParanormal.com. Can she find the email address there?
She will. It's such an easy email address. It's just Gary at GaryWilliamsParanormal.com.
Okay, so there you go, Megan.
And
you can find
I do readings for people all over the world. I have a lady who calls me from New Zealand every single week, so it doesn't matter. They call a Michigan number 231. That's Michigan. It doesn't matter where you are. You're just calling Michigan. It doesn't matter where I am. You're just calling Michigan. People get confused. Oh my God, he lives in Europe. Oh my God. No, you're not paying to call Europe. There you go.
All right, Megan. So there you go. Go to the website. You'll get the email address, and you'll be all set. Thank you so much for the phone call. So we don't have time to take another call here, so I want to talk a little bit more about the book. You talk about precognition in the book, but yet you describe the book as being more of your journey. Where's the precognition come in?
Well, precognition simply means to see ahead. It's not only, it is my journey, but it's also the journey of other extremely famous people who had this gift, and ordinary people. I mean, I have an example of Mr. Everyman, who basically dreamed the horse race winner before the race and went and bet on that horse and won. There's a lady in Denmark who basically was an actress, and she dreamed, I think, for 40 years the roles that she would play before the scripts were even written. So, it begs the question, how much is predetermined, and are we looking at a fixed future, or are we looking at a balance of free will and fixed future, or is it all free will and I'm just a good guesser? But the book is really, and I do go into other things, and I mean, it's a very interesting book. I go into time slips where people see the future. There was Victor Goddard who flew the plane in, I think it was World War II time, and he saw the airfield down below as it would be 5 years later with different colored planes and so on and so on and so on. The book is a mixture of my experiences and the entire subject of being able to predict the future. There's a chapter on astrology in which I got Lynn Palmer to help me out. Lynn Palmer is still living. Can you believe it? She told Frank Sinatra, she told Mia Farrow, whatever you do, don't marry Frank. And so I have some famous people who have helped me out with the book as well.
All right, and before we go to break here in a few seconds, where can people get the book?
You can walk into any bookshop and simply give them the title of the book, The Mystery of Precognition, The Foreseeable Future, The Mystery of Precognition by Gary Williams. If they don't have it in stock, they can order it because it's published by a trade publisher. It means a real publisher in England. Or you can go on the Internet and type in the title, and I'm quite sure that it's available on Amazon. That's the two ways you can get it. Okay,
so when we come back from break, we're going to take more of your phone calls for Gary Williams, our guest this hour. He's a psychic and an author. His website is GaryWilliamsParanormal.com. You can get more information about how you can schedule a private session with Gary on his website. And again, if you've been waiting on hold, be patient. We will get to your phone calls. It's Beyond Reality Radio. I'm J.V. Johnson. Thank you for being here tonight. Looking for our guest's book? Go to Amazon.com/shop/JVJTaps. Our guest this hour, Gary Williams, psychic and author. His book is called The Foreseeable Future, The Mystery of Precognition. But Gary, before we jump back to the phone lines here, what do you like about doing this kind of work with people? What makes it exciting for you?
Well, obviously when these things come true and they come back and they say, I can't believe it, it's beyond reality or whatever, and no matter how long it takes. I had a lady one time that kept coming back and saying, I haven't met the man you told me, I don't think it's real. I told her she's going to meet a man that he was going to have an old-fashioned gold pocket watch like grandfather had. He was going to be dangling it when they met. And eventually she went to a party and there was a man with the watch. And it happened 4 years later. So it gives me a sense of feeling that, I'm giving people some hope. Let's say they don't have a job and they've been looking for donkey's years. Finally, I see the job and I tell them when it's going to happen. And they come back and say, thank you so much for helping me. I think I get most satisfaction out of working with law enforcement people, trying to help people who have been lost or who shot somebody. Or I'm still working on the Jill Dando murder case. Jill Dando was a famous BBC reporter over here who was shot on her doorstep in 1999, and nobody knows who did it. It happened in broad daylight. She opened the door and somebody shot her, and I'm still working on that case. There's been many theories about who shot Jill Dando. There's even a book called Who Shot Jill Dando. There's all kinds of things that make me happy about what I do, and I'm not doing it just for the money. I really don't charge that much money for a reading. So that's the answer.
Do you do private consultations for missing persons? Is that part of the work that you do?
I do private consultations for missing persons at no charge. I do private consultations on the telephone all over the world and in person for people who just want to know their personal futures. And I do healing work, but you have to email me a picture, that I did that lady, and I do what I can do to sort of help you out. I think these gifts come from ghosts or spirits. I prefer spirits to ghosts. It's right down your alley. I don't know. I do know that why would Carl Jung, of all people, come to me when I was 16 years old and tell me that he was one of my guides?
That's amazing.
Unless this was a predetermined thing that I was supposed to do. I had no idea who he was.
Right.
And still, I wonder about that day. It changed my entire life. So I don't think this is, I want to make this clear to everyone listening. I don't think this is something that you can go to school and learn. There's the Arthur Findlay College in England where you go become a medium and you take a weekend seminar course and people come out and they hang up a shingle, suddenly they're working medium. That's nonsense.
Right.
I think you have to be born with it. That's my answer.
All right, let's try to run through some of these phone calls. We don't have a lot of time for each of the calls. We want to get through everybody. So this is TJ in Rhode Island. Good friend of the show. Hey, TJ, welcome.
Hey, how you doing, JV? And hello, Gary. And actually, I will say for the first time, for some reason, you make me a little nervous. But I will give you my question. The past has given birth to upheaval and chaos.
Why do I make you nervous? I'm just a man.
Well, compared to others, there's something about you. The past has given birth to upheaval and chaos, as well as a rather singular personal decision. I would like to know, when will it be executed? What is the chance of success, and any judgment?
What is the decision that you're trying to make, sir?
I've made it, I think.
Oh, well, what is it? And I'll tell you whether or not there's any success in it. I can't guess what it is. We don't have time to guess in 2 minutes.
Oh, all right. See, I couldn't go into any detail. It's just very personal. That's all.
Okay. Without knowing what it is, I would say that there's not a great deal of chance of success. I think what they're saying to me is you need to I'll get the word out in a minute, reevaluate what you are doing. Reevaluate what you are doing and go about it in a different manner, whatever it is. If you had told me what it is, I would have been able to give you probably a timeline on it, but I can't because you want to keep it secret, which is fine. That's another thing. You go to a psychic. Well, you're a psychic. You're supposed to know everything. Why do I need to tell you anything, Gary? I go, okay, here's your money back. Goodbye. There's the door.
No, I know that. It's just I didn't want to be too detailed on the air, but yeah, it's just very personal.
Well, you can email me. You can email me, and I'll be more than happy to answer your question. Okay, yeah. I'm straightforward. I don't make things up. I tell it like it is.
I think that's the best route. Just go to Gary's website, GaryWilliamsParanormal.com. Email address is there. Thank you, TJ. We always appreciate your phone call. Let's go to Barbara in Lake City, Florida. Hi, Barbara.
Hi. I just found your show tonight. I've never heard it before.
Well, welcome to the family.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm just traveling through Lake City.
Well, you got on your first time. That's terrific. You're on with Gary Williams right now.
I'm meant to be. So I very much need help with how to find the best kind of doctor that I need for my neck and spine problems.
I have nothing against Orthodox medicine. I believe in it very much, but I would strongly suggest that I'm picking up that this is a chronic problem. Chronic meaning it's not something that just started last week. This is an ongoing problem, please.
Absolutely. I'm disabled from it. I'm not able to work.
Don't tell me anymore. Just yes or no, Gary. I'm going to recommend that you go to the Edgar Cayce Institute in Virginia Beach. I don't mean you physically have to go there. You can call them, and they will refer you to someone in your area who will help you. And it will probably be an osteopath or a chiropractor. Casey very much believed in this. Or you can access the life readings, the health readings. They're free. And just simply type in what's wrong with you, and you'll access all the readings over a 40-year period about that particular illness. And that costs no money. Okay? So, you go to the doctor and do this too. All right? That's my answer.
Thank you very much.
Are you still there, or have you passed out?
Before. I've been to ARE before. Long time ago.
I'm sorry, you've been to where?
I've been to ARE, the foundation in Virginia Beach, Edgar Cayce's place.
Yes, and?
I've been there once.
Interesting.
No, I said, and did they give you any help for your problem?
Oh, no, I just visited there. This was like several decades back.
Oh, I see. So you didn't have the problem at the time you went to Casey's place. Okay.
Right. No, I didn't. It's
just wondering.
Barbara, thank you so much for the phone call, Barbara, and thank you for finding the show and listening. We hope you stay with us for the long term. Let's see. Let's jump to Anthony. Anthony's calling from New York. Hey, Anthony, you're on with Gary Williams.
I'm calling about, I had a cat in January, and she disappeared, and I was wondering what happened to her.
I think your cat has found another cat, and means. I'm seeing the cat come back between 7 and 9 days. The cat has not died, and I'm sure that you know what I mean by the cat has found another cat. Don't worry, and my time frames are pretty darn good, so don't worry. By the way, you're in the Big Apple. Do you remember Long John Neville?
No,
You're probably not that old.
I'm in Lewiston area.
Long John Neville had a psychic show on WOR back in the 1960s. He was before Art. He started all this.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
yeah.
forget it. I'm ancient. I'm 70.
Anthony,
there you go.
Anthony, that sounds like good news. Thank you for the phone call. We appreciate you listening as well. Let's get back to the book here for a second, Gary. When you set out to write this book, you said it's your journey. Is this an instructional book for people? Are you trying to be a mentor for folks who might be on a similar journey, or did you just want to tell your story?
No, I think I just wanted to tell the story. I don't think you can be a mentor for people who are have psychic. You either have the ability or you don't. It's not something that you suddenly become, go to some new age thing and suddenly you're going to become psychic or you meditate. And I just don't believe it. First of all, I have nothing to do at all with the new age movement. I'm a spiritualist. I'm a spiritualist psychic or a spiritualist medium, if you like. No, the book was basically written because after I wrote A Walk on the Wild Side, which you interviewed me about last year, the publishers asked me to write another book. And I thought a book about predicting the future and trying to come up with an answer of how much of it is preordained and how much is not. And I don't know the answer. I don't know how much is preordained. I only know that if I see something, sometimes it's off by a few weeks, but it happens. So at the end of the book, I say free or bound. That's the last chapter, free or bound. What lies behind it all? We don't know. How can they do it? How could anyone dream the roles they're going to play in a movie before they've even written the scripts? I mean, Crissette, that would be Gerard Crissette, by the way, the famous Dutch psychic, could predict who would sit in a certain chair weeks and months before the lecture was ever assigned or announced to the public. So we have to look at the mystery of precognition. We have to look at the mystery of Gary Williams. I don't know how I do this. I have no idea. People come here, they pay the money, I tell them, they come back and they say, oh my God, this is amazing, and happened X, Y, and Z. I say, great, have a nice life. I'm glad it happened. The only thing I don't do is I don't say, you've got cancer, you've got 6 months to live. I don't do that. I had a friend, Alex Tannis, in Portland, Maine. He's the one who went down to Amityville when it all started and said, this is the biggest hoax I've ever heard of in my entire life. Anyway, Alex is dead. He would tell people they're going to die. I don't do that. I don't believe in that. So, yeah, that's how it all evolved.
You say that people can't, go to a course and come out, or people do.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree with that. But there are some people who have these gifts and abilities, and they struggle with it. It actually causes them a lot of distress in their life. What do you say to folks like that?
Well, that's because they come from a religious background that teaches it as evil. If you look at the Christian Bible, if you removed all the psychic phenomena and the ghosts and the spirits and everything from the Bible, there would be no Bible. So, we'd do a whole show about this, about my feeling about organized religion and how it's ruined people's lives. So if you're struggling with it, Alex being Alex Tannis, if you're struggling with it like Alex did, he was Catholic and he wanted to be a priest as well. Every time you give a reading, Alex, you're committing a sin. I mean, at the end of the day, if God gave you the gift to start with, how could it be a sin? So you mustn't struggle with it. If you've got a gift, you need to use it to help other people. I live exclusively, now I'm retired, I was a radio announcer, can you believe it? All over the world, but mostly in Los Angeles. But I'm retired now, and I live exclusively off of doing psychic readings. So I must be doing something right, or I'd be sitting there on the sidewalk with a tin cup. There you go.
Yeah, is the future predetermined, or does free will trump anything that we might be seeing in the future?
I think there is free will, obviously, but I also think that before you're born, you, the individual, not God, sets it up. You choose certain things. You may choose your parents. You may choose certain a partner that you're going to meet in the future, and that time frame is fixed if you chose it before you were born. Casey says we make these choices before we're born. He says in all the readings that the incarnating soul devises the plan. So if the incarnating soul devises the plan, I'm only reading, when you come to see me, or I do it on the phone, I'm only reading what you, the soul, have decided. You don't know, you forget your previous lives or where you were before you're born. And in A Walk on the Wild Side, I do talk about that. I talk about life after death and all that kind of thing. So I'm trying to plug that book too, but basically this is the book we're talking about. The future can be foreseen. How, why, will perhaps always remain a mystery if you're looking for solid proof. But, go to a good psychic and see what you get. I did get a lady, I think it was your show, up in Minnesota, and her daughter had disappeared in North Carolina, and the police were covering it up, and I wasn't given any information, and I told her that her daughter disappeared at a gas pump, and to go back and look at the videotape of that thing, and she said the police have confiscated it, and we went on from there. So, and those are very rewarding cases, by the way.
Sure. Yeah, they have to be. We only have a couple minutes left here. If somebody was interested in a reading from you, what's the process for them to get that?
Well, go on the website and call me. The number is on there. It's a local United States number. Or email me, and when you email me, include your phone number, because I can call anywhere in the world for free. And if you have anybody listening in London, I have a London number, I have a New Zealand number. But you basically need to get in touch with me, because I do book up. I only do 2 a day, and I allow an hour to an hour and a half with you. I don't say, well, your time's up, I don't do that. So, and I think it's very important to be able to give details to people, like the gentleman who didn't want to tell on the air what his decision was. That's fine,
Sure.
It might have been something embarrassing. But what I don't like is when someone comes to see me, and we have an hour, let's say, and they just sit there and stare at me, and they say, well, you ought to know why I'm here. You're the psychic. And I go, well, you could be here for a number of reasons. If you just give me the broad area you want to look at, we'll go right into it. Psychics are not gods, and basically, if you're on the right mission, you're out there to help people. I don't charge very much for what I do. Actually, you could go out and have a great dinner in any Rhode Island restaurant, and I would be a lot less what I charge for people to come here, or any restaurant anywhere, even here where I live in Europe. So there you go.
Gary, thank you so much for coming back to us. Best of luck with the book, and I know you're always working on another project, so we hope to have you back on the show again really soon.
Okay, take care. It's 2:00 in the morning where you are, but I'm just getting up, so have a good day.
All right, well, you have a great day. All right, so Gary Williams, again, the website is GaryWilliamsParanormal.com if you want to get more information about the work that Gary does and how to contact him privately for a reading or other work. Okay, so it's Beyond Reality Radio. We're going to take a break here. We'll come back in just a few minutes and wrap things up. Did you know that online retailers like Amazon have constant deals that can save you money on the things you buy every day? It's no joke. Save 40%, 50%, even 80% on great products, and all you have to do is know about them. Noodle Shark is the way to be alerted when something good is coming your way. Noodle Shark is the social media page that lists great deals that not only save you money, but give you the deals before anyone else has them. All you have to do is find Noodle Shark on Facebook. Search it as The Noodle Shark. That's The Noodle Shark, because you deserve to save too. Become a shark and save. All right, thank you to everybody for being with us tonight, for both of our guests. 2 very excellent conversations. We appreciate both of them for being here. Great shows coming up. Remember, tomorrow night is a best of show. Monday, we're still working on a schedule shift, but Tuesday we'll be talking about a book called Medical Manslaughter, Will Your Doctor Cause Your Death? It's a true story written by Gloria York that outlines her husband's death by a medical error. And she also talks about many supernatural experiences in the process, including what she describes as 6 miracles that took place. So, great week of shows next week. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Listen tomorrow night. It is a best of program, Beyond Reality Radio. I'm JV, and we'll catch you next week.
Beyond Reality Paranormal is hosted by J.V. Johnson and produced by Orion Palmer and Slick Eddie Edwards. Like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please consider supporting the program either through your podcast platform, click on the link in the description, or on Patreon at Joha Productions. If you'd like to be a guest on Beyond Reality Paranormal, or you have a recommendation for a guest, contact our producer, Slick Eddie Edwards. Eddie is spelled with a Y at slickeddieedwards@gmail.com.